So if you want to see how I got this photo from here to here, please do stick around and watch the entirety of this video because it's going to be a fun how I look into photo editing kind of video, and just top it all off, have a nice exciting little announcement at the end of this video. So if you're interested and you want to stick to that, stick around and it should be a good one. So welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys have been having a good time. We're gonna start editing essentially. So I'm gonna give you a bit of premise. This photo here was taken on my partner and my second year anniversary. So 2 years together. We thought we'd go for a little hike. We're through the Tambourine Mountains here. And I found this leaf that was casting this amazing shadow and we thought we'd grab it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quickly just scale it down just a touch here. Even though I like having her in the corner there, it's just nice if I got her eye a bit closer to this line here. And that's kind of I think it just makes a bit more of a nicer frame for her there. So I'm gonna play with the exposure here just to get it just where I want it. And this is where I'll kind of leave it right about there. We're gonna pull down the highlight so I can get back some of the detail in her face and these leaves up the top here. Maybe boost the exposure a touch again. I'm gonna pull back the contrast just a touch. From here down to shadows, we're gonna pull the shadows up a little bit, and this is just to reveal a bit more of the image where normally you wouldn't be able to see it, but I'm not gonna change it just too much. Where the blacks I'm gonna crush down. So the idea with the blacks here is I really want this shadow to push and like pop. And by having that, the blacks lower, that allows that to happen, and I will be pulling the whites down a touch also. So we haven't gone too far in terms of the edit, very minimal. Before, after, we just kind of toned down those really bright highlights, which I actually think the highlights can be brought down just a touch more there. I like it. Heading down to the graph now. So this is where all of my stylistic style of editing comes in. It's all done in the tone curve. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to put 3 points on the tone curve. 1, 2, 3. If you've watched editing tutorials, you've seen every single photographer in the world do this, and I'm going to crush the blacks. There is a lot of blacks. If I crush it too much, it looks a bit silly. So just a touch, just to crush them maybe to there, like super minimal, and you can see a lot of the images in this portion, so we're gonna crush a lot of the image. However, my style likes to come from crushing the whites, and this is where the fun of all this comes in. If I crush the whites down, it makes this very, I wanna say, stylistic look, and then by doing that, yeah, that looks nice. I'm gonna come back here, up here, and just pull down. And as you can see, if I turn this off and on, you can see it just kills the whites there a little bit. I actually think I've gone a little bit too far with it if I bring some of that. Normally I do like to underexpose my images just a little bit, but because we are working with such harsh shadows, we kind of had to work with what we had. And that is the before and after for this particular image so far. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna calibrate the colors. So we go right down to the bottom of this menu here, and this section here is the color calibration that allows you to just dial in what you want certain colors to be perceived as before you even go into the hue slider. So I'm gonna just pull these around just to have a look. So with the red slider, it makes it a little bit aggressive, but I think I'm just gonna push it maybe negative 2, and we'll try the saturation. Do we wanna kill the saturation or push it? I think I'm gonna leave it at -4. Just there, so super minimal. Once again, you can barely see the difference. And we're going to the green sliders. That makes it more yellow. This makes it more minty color. So I'm gonna push it just a little bit up. So let's say +5 or so, and we'll play with the saturation. Do we wanna push it? Do we wanna drop it? I'm gonna drop it a touch, maybe by -1. Nothing too crazy. And this already is looking very, very different to when we started. And I can actually come up to the tone curve once again and just play with this point here a little bit more now that we're working with an image that with the color calibration allows the highlights here not to look like that ugly yellow color. It kind of makes it blend just a little bit better. So we have before and after. That's looking really, really nice. So next, I'm gonna see what happens if I push the clarity up. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm actually gonna drop the clarity a touch, maybe like -10, because I really like this soft feeling in my images. So I might even make another point and just crush the very blackest parts there. Texture as well, I'm just gonna leave that where it is. We don't need dehaze because that just makes it really, really aggressive. I might actually even just drop the dehaze by maybe -3. And as we can see here, there's not a lot of saturation in the image as is. So I'm actually really happy with how this is looking. The white balance is looking pretty good too. We'll just leave that where it is. Maybe we'll boost it by a little bit to warm the image up. And we can come down to the hue, the HSL sliders. So we'll go through our red tones. There isn't a lot of red there. We'll go through our orange and you can see that really affects her skin tone. And if we come here, I just want to just a little push towards the red. And then I'll come to the saturation section of this and I'll drop the saturation down a touch and then darken the skin. So that there made a bit of a difference and just made it a bit more rich colors rather than it being super saturated. So I'll just push it back up. The big one, however, is gonna be in the yellow. So you can see a lot of these leaves here have this yellow tint, and in fact, you can see along her face, the bottom there is quite yellow as well. So this is gonna be a very fine dance we do here. So I'll pull the yellows down towards orange, because I'm not the biggest fan of bright yellows in images just in general. So I'll just drop the yellows here as well. Kind of looks a bit crazy if you go too far with it. Just along her face here. By doing that, you can already see we've pulled out such a nice color in the image. I can actually boost the luminance of the oranges here now that it's not super, super aggressive on there. We'll just drop it by a touch, just a hair. Next we have green. Obviously green is green. And I want to keep this pretty true to life. If I push it towards the mint color, maybe a touch, I'm going to desaturate it a bunch, and I'm going to drop the luminance of the greens significantly as well, just enough so we don't get this section here getting artifacts. So we're just going to push it up until there is no artifacts. It looks nice, and I'm happy with it. So once again, maybe I'll give it a bit more saturation there. Something in that world I think looks nice. I like deep greens, and I think that looks really good. Aqua, I don't believe there's really any aqua in this image except her denim jacket here. So I'm going to push this towards the blue. I'm going to desaturate it quite a lot. And I'm going to drop the luminance of it quite a lot. Maybe I'll push the luminance of that one quite a bit. However, the bulk of the denim jacket will be of the blue hue. I'm going to pull it just a smidge towards the purple. I'm going to pull this right down so we really kill the saturation in the blues. And I'm gonna pull down the luminance just to make it not so in your face. And that also affected the sky here in the background. Amazing, and essentially here we have a really nice foundation for what my color science is gonna be behind this. So we can see before and after with the color shifts. It really just pulled a lot of the saturation out of the blues and the greens and just made them a bit more rich. And that's just what I like to see in my images. But now we get to come up the top here again. I'm gonna add some tone curves here. So I'm gonna add a tint of cyan to the shadows here. Just a little bit. So we can see in the darkest images, if I go literally into the blacks and pull this slider a touch to the right, we will see a slight hue change in the blacks, and that will make the whole image cyan. We don't want that, maybe a bit less. So we want it literally maybe two is just enough, I think. And then we're gonna do the same here with the reds. We're gonna give a little bit of red to the highlights. This part here just takes a bit of concentration and just fine adjusting, because very slim and fine movements here will really affect the image in different ways. This is the mid-tones. This is where the skin lies, right in the middle of the graph. And I'm really trying to concentrate and just isolate that so they look realistic still. And I think that's where I want them, right about there. Then if we come over here, we're gonna copy these channel settings and paste them in the last one, boom. And this, I'm gonna pull a touch of yellow into the highlights here. So I'm gonna go over the very widest section of this image now is gonna be of a yellow tint now. So we can see these highlights here up on the top of the image are gonna go a yellow color rather than be a pure white, which I do quite like. However, I don't want her to become yellow, so I'm gonna get the midtones here and push them towards blue. Just a hair. As we can see, that tiny little movement there moves that yellowy skin tone towards the blue, leaving it at that red color I like it to be at. We're just checking before and after once again, and I really love how this image is turning out. I don't really need to do anything into this one. We can paste, see what it'll do, but I might put a touch more cyan in the shadows if I just come into the split toning. So there's my cyan right about there. I'm gonna punch a little bit. Oh, it's super touchy because we have so much shadowy color in the image. We're gonna just make it affect just the darkest points. So that pushes it a lot. We're gonna make it just affect maybe 70%. And then we'll play around with this slider, and I like it right about there. Highlight wise, we're gonna be pushing some oranges, maybe towards the yellow, that kind of color into the highlights. And we're gonna be talking about just a hair once again. Before and after here, it's very minimal, very, very fine adjustments, and that's what makes this interesting. Now we come into the sharpening. Do I want to make it really sharp or leave it as it was? Maybe a touch of sharpening. We don't really need noise reduction because this looks really sharp. And then we can come down to the bottom here, and do I want to add grain? Maybe a hair of grain. Maybe we'll go like -15 or so just to give a bit of texture to the image. And that's looking really, really nice. So that is step one, essentially. We went from before to this point, which I think looks really good. And then from here, we start adding radial filters and all that sort of good stuff. So I'm gonna come in here and decrease the exposure with a filter. And this is just a gradient. If you use Lightroom, you'll get really good at these because they are your bread and butter for finalizing edits. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rotate this here so it affects just this section. And I really wanna drop the exposure and make it nice and dark. I want to really frame her face. That's kind of the goal. So I'm going to really drop the exposure. And as you can see, it doesn't really affect the blacks there, but it does affect the lighter area. I'm going to get the highlights and crush them as well. Maybe the whites also. Amazing. So we've dropped that all down. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to make another one of these, and I'm going to do it from the top. I'm gonna see what happens when I drop the exposure. It might look a little crazy. Maybe I'll just drop it by a smidge. We'll pull the highlights down to about there and the whites to about there also. And this, I think, in my eyes, it's looking pretty good so far. There we go. We're gonna come in nice and close to her face. We're gonna get our brush tool here. We're gonna hit O on our keyboard to, so we can see the overlay, and we're gonna paint just her face in. Zoom out, hit O, and we have masked out her face. What we wanna do here is get the shadows, pull them up so we can see just a little bit more, maybe drop this part of the image. It's looking a bit crazy. Pull the shadows up just a touch. See, if you pull it too far, you just look a bit fake there. Just pull them up a touch, and then we'll get the blacks and crush them. So if you crush it completely, the blacks look a bit silly also. Just enough to where it looks like it belongs. Highlights, we want to push the highlights, pull them down. I'm not sure what I want to do with the highlights. They look really nice, higher and lower. Maybe we'll pull them to about there. Pull them down a little. And this is looking amazing. I love this image. I'm really enjoying it. We're gonna get another brush tool here. We won't use the auto mask feature. We will turn on seeing our filter. We're gonna paint in this section, and we're going to paint in this section here without getting her face, my bad. Amazing, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna darken it a little. So we're really gonna isolate her in this frame. Highlights, drop them. Whites, drop them. We even paint a little bit in there, just to make it so it bleeds into the rest of the image. Maybe not that much. We'll get rid of it like that. Nice. And I think that's looking good so far. Nice and shadowy. Come into the eyeball, and this is how I do edit portraits here. So we're gonna open up yet another radial filter, and we're going to paint in the entire eye. And as we can see, we do just paint literally the entire eye in, and we're going to raise the exposure by a hair. just a little bit of exposure adding. We're going to up the sharpness to make it a lot sharper, and we're going to add a new filter. Next one we're going to do is going to be the iris. So we're going to paint the entire iris here, make this so we can see it, and then get rid of the pupil. As we can see, it's just the iris. We're going to push the saturation quite a bit. We're going to push the clarity just to make it really pop, and we're going to push the exposure a touch. I'm going to up the sharpness of it as well. And as you can see already, the eye is really like pow in your face. And I think I may have gone just a little bit overboard with the saturation. So we'll kill that saturation just a little bit. It's looking a little too crazy and creepy. We don't want creepy eyes, we want realistic eyes. I do like making them pop just a little though. Next one is we're going to add one more filter. And we're going to paint just around the black edge of the eyeball here, and then the pupil itself. And the whole point of this is just to darken it and make it really punch. Contrast up, exposure down, sharpness up, clarity maybe a touch of clarity. And as we can see, we come out and that is a huge difference on the eye. One last thing I will quickly do is I'm going to make this big, and we're just going to get the T section of her head. So T section will be the forehead, it'll be the nose, and we'll get the eyebrows here, one eyebrow, we can't really see that one anyway. We'll get her lips, and then we'll get her chin. Hit O again, come back out, and just raise the sharpness by maybe 15 to 20% just to make that, it's just a really nice part of the face to really feature, it's a really nice part of the face to have the features come out. It's just part of that T section there. And as we can see, I'm pretty sure I might just quickly touch these hues on her skin quickly. The one last thing I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to put a radial filter around her face right here. I'm going to drop the I'm going to drop the exposure of everything around her, and that will just really make the viewer look at this part of the image straight away, and it'll also allow me to raise the exposure of the whole image also by just a hair. And there we have it. That is my take on this image. It went from here, if I open this up, from there to there, a massive difference. It really shows how much you can pull back into an image in Lightroom. The big announcement for this video is that I've actually launched my first online print photography store. The links will be down below, but essentially if you go to dominicthwaite.darkroom.tech, you can go in and I've released my first collection, which is of the European summer that I spent over there, and you can purchase those images, have them printed and sent to you, and there's a plethora of different formats you can get printed: paper, canvas, steel, or framed. And if you guys enjoy them, please let me know. I can't wait to see if you guys do pick up any of these images. But for now, thank you for watching this little quick edit. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.